for Southeast Louisiana, Mr. Belisario.
Yes, I would like Mr. Ostrowski to come up to the mic, and yourself and Parish President Pat Brister.
Hello, how you doing? Thank you for doing this.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
for all the years that you've served. Great job.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Okay, everyone. This is the St. Tammany Parish Council resolution for G. Gary Ostrowski, United Way, Southeast Louisiana. It's fairly lengthy, but it has to cover a lot for his number of years and his successes running the United Way operations. Starts out with whereas G. Gary Ostrowski, retiring President, CEO of United Way of Southeast Louisiana for 25 years of dedicated service and outstanding leadership, particularly with the highly effective recovery and rebuilding activities in St. Tammany Parish and across Southeast Louisiana during the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and Hurricane Isaac. Whereas in 1971, St. Tammany became part of the United Way of Southeast Louisiana, formerly known as the United Way for the Greater New Orleans area. A regional officer for the United Way was opened in St. Tammany in 2004 through the efforts of local leaders and the vision of Mr. Gary Ostrowski. Whereas the United Way of Southeast Louisiana serves the southeastern region of the state, comprised of the parishes of Jefferson, Orleans, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, St. Tammany, Tangipahoa, and Washington. Whereas programs serving St. Tammany residents are funded by United Way to partner agencies based upon needs of the community, agency credibility, and achievement of predefined outcomes, which have proven to be very successful in carrying out its mission. Services provided by included education, health, and safety net programs. Whereas in 2010 and 2011, over 76,671 St. Tammany residents participated in 39 United Way partner agencies through 60 programs. Residents received additional service from the United Way's IDA project and the VITA tax return preparation sites. Whereas since 2010, United Way has provided a total of $218,246 to benefit suicide prevention in St. Tammany Parish from special events, designations, and in-kind services. United Way's Dolly Parton Imagination Library program has distributed 25,623 free age-appropriate books to kids in St. Tammany from birth to 5 years of age since 2009. United Way's Women's Leadership Council has provided $50,000 towards efforts to build the Children's Museum in St. Tammany. Since 2004, 80 to 100 St. Tammany youth have participated each summer in the United Way Saints Community Patrol Group, where life skills are taught through the game of football. Whereas, therefore, be it resolved that the St. Tammany Parish Council does recognize G. Gary Ostrowski upon his retirement effective July 1st, 2013, with United Way of Southeast Louisiana after 25 years of selfish, dedicated service to St. Tammany as well as the entire Southeast region. And be it further resolved that the United Way, the St. Tammany Parish Council does recognize the extraordinary efforts of Mr. Ostrowski, along with the United Way employees, agencies, and volunteers. On behalf of their services to the citizens of St. Tammany Parish, we congratulate G. Gary Ostrowski on your retirement and your future endeavors.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It really is quite an honor to be here because the United Way is kind of local people looking at local problems and coming up with great solutions, and that's what we did collectively, for me at least, in the last 25 years, and I want to say thank you. It is a partnership between government, business, and of course the third sector being the not-for-profit sector. So thank you, and anytime I'm around, give me a call. Thanks.
It can be picked up.
One more. Thanks.
Thank you
Appreciate it
again.
again. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bosch, we're gonna move you down to the number 8 spot, okay? Where's Mr. Bosch at? Thank you, sir. We're going to let all of these good people get their certificates and awards, okay? And that way, you'll have time to make your presentation to us on the audit report. Thank you. Okay, item 3 is certificate of recognition to Troop 85's Eagle Scouts, William Thomas Young, Drew Walker, Andy Slammer, and Cannon Hinton, Mr. Falconer and Mr. Gould.
Can we get you all to come up? And parents. Big part. Well, that's the fun part. Come stand right here, Will. Good job. Congratulations, fellas.
Drew Walker, nice to meet you. So which way are we facing?
Well, I'm going to give you the certificate, and then we're all going to turn around and take our picture, so stand by. All right, on behalf of the Parish Council, I mean, it's a real honor and a privilege to recognize these 3 young men in achieving the rank of Eagle Scout. Believe me, I know what it takes to achieve this rank, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of perseverance. So let me just read the certificate. St. Tammany Parish Government Certificate of Recognition. The Parish Council desires to acknowledge the youth of this parish for their positive achievements and accomplishments. In particular, those who choose to remain in school, participate in their religious convictions, and are morally and community conscious, and actively pursue productive lifestyles. With the constant media exposure given to negative youth behavior, it is time we acknowledge the younger generation of this parish who are honest, law-abiding, and promote positive attitudes. I might also add they are trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. The Parish Council is proud to recognize a young man who has not been overcome by negative peer pressure, one who knows that perseverance and commitment can achieve goals, a young man who has been an active member of a Boy Scout Troop 85 and completed the requirements of the worthy rank of Eagle Scout. These young men have apparently set high standards and goals for themselves and will no doubt go far in their chosen career and achieve the success that they obviously deserve in life. It is a fitting gesture for the parish government to acknowledge and recognize, in this case, William Thomas Young for earning the rank of Eagle Scout with Boy Scout Troop 85. This certificate of recognition was approved and presented on July 11th, 2013. I sign it, and Parish President, Ms. Brister, also. Congratulations.
All right, the next young man is Drew Walker. I want to say this first about the amount of effort that it takes to get these young men this far and become Eagle Scouts on their own, but the parents are really the key. They work with these kids, and they push them and encourage them, and they're there for countless meetings, campings, all kinds of stuff, 10-mile hikes. That's a fun one. But also, there's a lot of teamwork because other parents are involved. Other parents helped out with these kids. They are a product of some very good people, a team, and that's what scouting is all about. It's about teamwork, and it's about doing all the right things. And I'm very proud of them. Drew, I want to give you this plaque. Thank you. I want to congratulate you, son. Cannon Hinton. For those of you who aren't aware of the fact, his mother standing here works for the parish as a I guess an attorney, right? And she's been around for quite a while, and I had no idea she had a son in the troop. And I'm very, very proud. And I know that what you've gone through and what you've had to do.
His father's at Philmont.
Oh, he's at Philmont? That's a 10-day hike. Oh, by the way, it's rained every day this past week. And I've heard from our troop. Every day, and it's gotten cold every night, so they even got hail on. Son, congratulations. Young man in the middle. That work?
Okay, I'm gonna add, Madam President, if you and our Vice Chair, Mr. Falconer, would just stay there. Because the next one is certificates of recognition to the U16 Slidell Cyclone Girls Soccer Team. And let me come on down.
Come on up, girls. Come on up.
Welcome. Let's see, is this on? Congratulations, girls and coaches. Normally, when we see red shirts, y'all don't know the joke. Look at Marty, he's, yeah, Richard's going, yeah. Normally, when we see red shirts, we know we're going to have a roustabout council meeting. So I'm sure your competitors felt the same way when they competed against you. I'm going to ask Ms. Brister, who's our parish president, Mr. Falconer, our council vice chairman, to help me with this. Let me first read this Cyclones girls soccer team won Louisiana U16 girls competitive 2 state championship. In the semifinal and final, they came back from 1-0 down and won both matches 2-1. They represented Louisiana at the regionals in Decatur, Alabama, winning all 3 of their bracket games, including wins against North Texas, Alabama, and Mississippi. This put them in a semifinal game against South Texas, and they gave it a good shot, but they lost 1-0. So girls, that's an outstanding accomplishment and representing us extremely well. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I'll read the names, and then y'all can shake our 3 hands, okay? Okay, first is Peyton Corwin. Christina Couture. What, how do I pronounce it? Congratulations. Alyssa Dennis. Josie Griffin. We'll save it for the coach. Jessica Harris. Okay.
Oh, vacation time.
Vacation. Megan Hoff. Rebecca Kernahan. Caitlin Knight. Chloe Lamprecht. Jessica Mahoney. Elia Martin. Hannah Miller. Alexis Malero. Martha Santos. Kayla Seals. Victoria Stevens. And I'm assuming Sydney Teeter and Leah Canino are not here? All right, Coach. And Coach J.B. Mahoney. Good job, coaches. And we have two assistant coaches, John Allen and Colin Gilmartin. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you. I want to tell y'all, girls, Miss Bristol, Mr. Falcon, and I all were goalies one time at the same time, and we stopped the ball from Pele.
You guys can lean over a little bit too.
Y'all not old enough to know who Pele is.
Break real quick. Can we get a Cyclones break real quick?
Cyclones break?
Yeah, you can come in here with us. Come on in, Parish President.
They're going to do the cyclone break.
On three, it's Cyclones. Come on in. All right, Malero, loud and proud. Let's do it. Here we go. Loud and proud, ladies. Let's go now.
1, 2, 3, Cyclones!
Okay, the next
think I'm up.
certificate, excuse me, Ms. Bristol.
I said, I think I'm ready. Am I?
Oh,
Am I
yeah.
next?
Certificate of recognition to Dr. Cheryl Ann Blaine for her invention of the boundary extraction method.
That's rocket scientist to us, but we know she's good. Come on up. This is hers, I believe. Would you check it? Up here beside me. Dr. Cheryl Ann Blaine, in recognition of Dr. Blaine's invention of the boundary extraction method, which has been awarded the prestigious Naval Research Laboratories Edison Award in recognition of its significant contribution to science and engineering. Thank you and congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yes, please, Mr. Falconer.
Chairman, we've got the district executive, Mr. Eric Howell, who's here with the Estrum Area District, and he was here recognizing those Eagle Scouts, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity to.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, number 6 is certificate of recognition to Stephanie Archer, Animal Services employee, for her investigation that led to the discovery of an extensive puppy mill.
Unfortunately, it's sad that we have to have these situations, but we do want to recognize Stephanie Archer, if she would come forward, please. Thank you, Stephanie. The animal service people work hard every day, and I'm very happy to be able to recognize Stephanie tonight. So. In recognition of her commitment to the welfare of animals by thoroughly investigating a claim which led to the discovery of a puppy mill, saving 90 dogs from inhumane conditions. Thank you, Stephanie, for everything you do every day. Mr. Chairman, if you will, we would ask the next two, Officer Mark Michaud and Representative Austin Badon, to be combined.
We'll do them together.
Yes.
So these are certificates of recognition to Officer Mark Michaud, and also to Louisiana State Representative Austin Badon for their work in the continued search for Terry Lynn Monette.
If you recall, another sad situation, but Officer Mark Michaud and Representative Austin Badon would not stop until they did finally find Terry Lynn Monette. But in recognition of his selfless volunteer work in the search for Terry Lynn Monette after her disappearance on March 2nd, 2013, and in recognition of Representative Badon's selfless work to continue the search for Terry Lynn Monette after her disappearance, their dedication to the investigation is a testament of their commitment to public service, and for this, we applaud them and thank them from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you, and thanks for being here and your
Thank you
family,
so
too.
much. I
Please,
appreciate
if you'd like to introduce your family, I'd love
Yes,
for
ma'am.
you to.
Thank you.
Go down your way.
Thank you, Madam President and council members. I would like to introduce my family. I have my wife, Therese, who is with me. I have my mother-in-law, Darlene, who is with me as well, and my father, Austin Badon Sr., who is with me as well. I thank them all for being here. And I really want to thank Madam President and you for your work in trying to make the lives of the people of St. Tammany better. I appreciate you having myself and Officer Michaud here. Our work to find Terry Lynn Monette was very extensive, but in coming to know Officer Michaud, I have known that both of us are under one leader, and that's the Lord God himself, who has brought us both together to help find this young lady. And fortunately, we were able to find her on June 8th and bring a measure of closure to her family. And so I appreciate all of your thoughts and prayers, and I ask that you keep the memory of Terry Lynn Monette within your hearts, and always hug and keep your family and your children a little bit closer, because it was a tragic situation, and it could happen to any one of us. So thank you very much.
Okay, moving back to item 2 on the presentations, Mr. Eric Bosch of LaPorte, Cert, Romig in hand, presenting review of our 2012 audit report for St. Tammany Parish, CAFRA. Eric,
Yes, sir.
good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here this evening. As Councilman Bender indicated, I'm with LaPorte. We've completed the audit of the 2012 CAFRA, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. First off, a bit of thanks to the administration, President Brister, Beverly Garapi, Leslie Long, and the rest of the staff. Just to let you all know as council members that we received full cooperation from all the staff and the administration, and we certainly appreciate it. It makes our job to be effective and efficient auditors a little bit easier, and so they've always been cooperative, and we thank them again for that. So, in regards to the audit for the 2012 CAFR, a couple of things in regards to just more of administrative, in regards to required communications by auditing standards, Statement of Auditing Standards number 114. Required communications to those with the oversight responsibility for financial reporting, which would be the Parish Council. First off, to give you the assurance from Laporte that we've maintained our independence both in appearance and in fact. We did not make any management decisions as they would impact the financial statements, nor did we audit our own work. We did not provide or perform any type of bookkeeping services that we came back later and then audited as well. That would be an impairment of the independence. We did not have any disagreements with management on accounting matters. There was a new accounting standard that was implemented, GASB number 65, that had some minimal impact as far as to the presentation of the financial statements, but we certainly worked with the finance department as far as in implementing that particular standard. We did not have any difficulties with management in performing our audit. Again, the cooperation that we've received, not only for this year, but for all the years that we've been of service for St. Tammany Parish has been just outstanding, and again, we appreciate that. We're not aware of any opinion shopping, and when I presented a couple of weeks ago, we had a little bit of discussion about that as to how we would determine whether or not there was any type of opinion shopping. And opinion shopping would be where the entity is possibly looking at other CPAs to render some type of an opinion on a particular transaction. The question was raised, well, how would we know? Part of our procedures includes inquiries as far as with staff and management, but also review of the minutes. But one of the other things just to keep in mind that often opinion shopping we may see with a smaller entity, a small company, for example, where the CEO or the president or the owner of the company is choosing the auditors as well as kind of overseeing the whole process. Here we've got an inherent segregation of responsibilities as far as with the council being responsible for the selection and the approval of the auditor and the administration handling the financial transactions. So if there was an issue where opinion shopping may come into play, it's unlikely that there would be, that would pop up because of the, as I say, the inherent segregation of those responsibilities. In regards to audit adjustments, we did not have any audit adjustments made to the financial statements, nor did we have any past audit adjustments. Those would be differences, audit differences noted in the course of our audit that were not material to the financial statements, but significant enough that we would need to keep track of. And ultimately, if there was an accumulation of audit differences that were not material in collectively the aggregate, we would need to consider whether or not they could be material to the financial statements. We had none as far as a result of our audit. Going into the auditor's reports, there's 3 separate reports that we submit and issue as part of the CAFR, included in the CAFR. The first one is the opinion on the financial statements. For this year, we have a qualified opinion on the aggregate discretely presented component units, and that qualification is a result primarily of the coroner's office. They receive a separate audit, although they're a component unit as far as for financial reporting purposes. Their auditor disclaimed an opinion as far as to their financial statements for 2012. The coroner is a major component unit for the St. Tammany Parish CAFR, and because of that disclaimer, we've qualified the opinion as far as for the component units. However, for everything else, for all other opinion units, we've had an unqualified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that can be rendered. So for all other opinion units, we had no gap departures, no departures from generally accepted accounting principles, nor did we have any scope exceptions. All the information, again, that we requested was provided by administration. The next report that we render as far as with the CAFR is the report on compliance and internal control over financial reporting. This is in compliance with government auditing standards, the GAO requirements in regards to, one, as far as assessment of internal control over financial reporting and whether or not we had any weaknesses in regards to financial reporting. Weaknesses, whether it be lack of segregation of duties or other things that we would define to be either a significant deficiency or a material weakness. And I'm happy to report that we had none as far as any type of reportable conditions, significant deficiencies, or material weaknesses as it relates to the internal control over financial reporting. The second area, as far as with that particular report, is the compliance with laws and regulations. And basically, we've broken this down into two components, two parts, if you will. The first part is the basic area that covers really any governmental entity in the state of Louisiana. We follow the audit program established by the legislative auditor, and it covers, again, the common areas: budget law compliance, bid law, debt restriction, fiscal agency and cash management requirements, expenditure restriction laws. And so, again, we perform sampling as far as with transactions that occurred during 2012 and test for those particular compliance elements. And for the areas that we tested, for the sample that we selected, we had no exceptions with our procedures, and again, no findings as far as with that area. The second area in regards to compliance that we test gives us a little bit more flexibility, and this is areas that may be unique or particular for St. Tammany Parish. We looked at, as part of that second part of the compliance testing, credit card testing. We've been doing this for several years now. Vehicle usage and vehicle allowance, accrued absences, overtime in light of Hurricane Isaac, which took place in 2012, testing a little bit beyond as far as our typical disbursements testing with vendor identification, making sure that they were properly registered with the Secretary of State here in Louisiana. And then we also perform a payroll disbursements test, making sure that people that are getting paid should be getting paid, and that the folks that the amount that they're getting paid has been properly documented, properly approved within the personnel files. And again, as far as with the testing over those areas, we had no exceptions as far as with the items tested. The final report that we have is the report on compliance and internal control with major federal awards. And for this area, again, this is the federal grants, the different awards that come through, whether directly through a federal agency or pass through a state agency or another local agency. We identify the major programs, the major federal programs, and that's a combination of both dollar amount as well as a risk assessment. So we're not looking at every single federal program or every single federal grant, but again, we're complying with Office of Management and Budget Circular A133 in regards to the selection of those major programs and the determination of those major programs. For those programs, we test not only compliance with the particular grant provisions, laws, regulations associated with those particular grants and federal awards, but also the internal control over compliance. So again, we want to make sure that you've complied, but that also that internal controls are properly in place to ensure compliance on a go-forward basis. For the programs selected, for the programs tested, we had no exceptions as far as with the testing that we performed, nor did we have any issues in regards to the internal control over compliance for those major programs. So that completes as far as the three reports that we issue as part of the CAFR. And again, kind of back to kudos to the Finance Department with the document that you received, that comprehensive annual financial report, which is, probably 290 pages, 280 pages, somewhere about that. Our contribution to that as far as input, actual paper, is about 6 pages, 7 pages. So all the notes, the detail, the schedules, the statistical data is all compiled and put together as far as by the Finance Department. But we, as far as our engagement with you all, is to review, audit, and make sure that the information is materially correct, and again, based on the samples that we select and the performance of procedures. The final thing that I want to point out, and this is identified in the CAFR, in the management discussion and analysis, which essentially is I guess, like a 10K for a public company that gives kind of a, what happened during 2012. What are the good points? What are maybe some of the things that changed during the year from 2012 versus 2011? But one thing to point out as far as, again, I see you all as being the board of directors, if you will, for this entity, for this corporation, is what's the financial health? And one area that really anybody is going to look at is going to be the general fund. And what's the fund balance as far as in the general fund? And at 2012, December 31st, 2012, the general fund balance was approximately 76% of the general fund expenditures. So right about, basically what that covers is about 9 months worth of expenditures. If you don't receive another dollar of revenue and the expenditures remain consistent based on 2012, how long could you last? And based on what the fund balance is at the end of 2012, you've got about 9 months worth of coverage as far as for those expenditures. GFOA indicates best practice, anywhere from 30 to 90 days. So again, St. Tammany is well beyond and has a good financial position in regards to its general fund balance. So just to point that out to you all as overseers and the governing body for this organization, for this government. So that concludes my prepared remarks. If there's any questions.
Mr. Groby.
Mr. Bosch, you spoke a little bit about the corner. When you were preparing those notes, did you receive cooperation from that?
Yes, sir. Again, with the coroner, it's a separate auditor. The audit firm of Carr, Riggs, and Ingram performed the audit for the coroner for 2012. We've maintained contact throughout their audit process. One of the things that we need to receive from them as a component unit is basically a certificate of independence, assurance to us, because we're relying on that report, we're relying on the work that they're doing. Again, the issues that they had to issue that disclaimer of opinion, I think, we're aware of some of the circumstances, but ultimately, the cooperation, sir, that we received was there.
Anyone else on the council? Well, Mr. Bosch, we appreciate the report. Have to say, Miss Leslie's smiling at me. She's just waiting for that atta girl. To the whole finance department and our parish president, both for the administration and the council, we're awfully proud of our parish.
Yes, sir.
And one day we will have it completely unqualified. And I know as
That's
we
right.
have in the past and as we will in the future.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bosch.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to add my thanks to Leslie, who's Director of Finance, and all her staff. They work tirelessly, and when I tell you tirelessly the last few days, she knows what that means, to get this report and get this good report. So I'm proud of them, too, and proud to be a part of them. Thank you
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much.
All that hard work, you get 2 claps, huh, Ms. Leslie? Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. Let me go through the items that we need to pull. Under ordinances for introduction, we need to pull number 1. We are pulling number 11. We are pulling number 13. Under resolutions, we're pulling number 4 and number 5. And we're also pulling resolution number 9 and 10. Any other council members wish to pull? Mr. Dean, Mr. Sharp, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Falconer, Mr. Gould, Mr. Tanner, Mr. Groby, Mr. Canulette, Mr. Belisario, Ms. O'Brien, Mr. Stefancic, Mr. Ortigue, and Mr. Smith. Okay, need a motion to...
Move to introduce.
Who was that? Mr. Gould. Motion by Mr. Gould to introduce, seconded by Mr. Smith. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay. The first item is ordinance calendar number 5016, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 197.58 acres from A1, A2, and A4 to A1, A2, A4, and MHO, Ward 8, District 9. Mr. Belisario.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will amend ordinance 5016 in accordance with an agreement I've had with the residents. I'm changing the amount of acres to be reclassified from the 197.58 to 1.153 acres, which is one lot.
1 point what now?
1.153 acres. That's one lot.
Okay. And we have that change here.
That is correct.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Belisario, and that's seconded, excuse me, Mr. Stefancic.
That lot identified in?
Yes.
Okay, second by Mr. Canulette. Please vote on the amendment.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, motion and second to introduce as amended. Mr. Belisario makes the motion, Mr. Artigue seconds. Thank you. Item 11, ordinance for introduction, ordinance count number 5043, ordinance declare lot 161 of Singing River Estates as surplus property and authorize the parish to proceed with the sale of same, Ward 2, District 3. Mr. Thompson, I have here to go to Ms. Kelly Rabelais on this.
Yes, we request that it would be removed from the agenda. We received notice from the assessor's office that this adjudication to the parish is being reversed by the assessor's office due to a mistake in the name. So
Okay.
therefore, once they complete their paperwork, it will no longer be an adjudicated property to the parish, therefore we cannot sell it as such.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, you want to make the motion to remove? Motion by Mr. Thompson to remove, seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, next is item 13, ordinance count number 5045, ordinance to extend for 6 months the moratorium within a portion of voting precinct 914, Ward 8, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we'd just like to make a motion to remove this from the calendar.
Okay, motion by Mr. Smith to remove, seconded by, who was, Mr. Belisario, okay. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, moving to resolutions. Item 4, resolution CS number C-3772, resolution to concur, not concur with Covington annexation and rezoning of 18 acres from Parish HC-2 to Covington RM-2 and CR with planned combined use overlay district, Ward 3, District 3. Mr. Thompson.
I'll move to concur.
Motion to concur by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 5 is resolution CS number C-3773, resolution to concur, not concur with the City of Slidell annexation and rezoning of 1.766 acres from Parish NC4 and A4 to Slidell C1A, Ward 8, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to move to not concur.
Okay, resolution to not concur. That's seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Jerry, can I ask a question real quick on that?
Sure.
Does the property meet the agreement, the annexation agreement? I know we're saying, I know what TJ's saying, but I'm curious, does the property fit inside the agreement, annexation agreement between the parish and the city? Inside the growth area?
We don't have a growth area with the city of Slidell. I mean, if we did, we would be able to work some things, but we don't have a growth area there.
Mr. Canulette, I think it does meet the requirements of the state law, and I think that's the only requirement, that would be in question at this time, I believe.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Mr. Smith, you were not leaning towards tabling or postponing this?
Well, we've looked at this pretty extensively, and there are so many issues and concerns that we have here that I don't feel at this time that tabling or postponing would be in order.
Okay. I worked extensively, as I told you, when we were discussing in the back on this corridor. Sydney, how close is this to the new Fremo interchange?
It's 2 blocks from Fremont.
1,000 feet from the Fremo interchange?
Just looking at the scale on the maps.
Okay. And Slidell C1A, what could be put there, Sydney?
I don't have that information with me.
Okay,
Slidell zoning,
yeah,
C1A?
just wondering. It's probably a commercial, okay. Okay, so your motion, Mr. Smith, is to not concur?
That's correct.
Okay, and who was the second by? Mr. Gould, please vote.
Motion passes 13 yeas, 1 nay, no one absent.
Number 9 is Resolution CS number C-3777, resolution to authorize the parish president to sign a memorandum of agreement between the Department of Justice and St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office regarding the audit of the mental health program at St. Tammany Parish Jail. Mr. Belisario?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to table this resolution C-377 until after executive session.
Okay, so we want to defer until after
Defer, right.
executive session.
Yes,
Okay. Excuse me? Table?
table.
Okay, look. So I'm looking at what I have written. Not what I wrote.
It was the advice you were providing.
You know. Okay, we'll say table. Steve, let me come to you on this. It was written to me as defer to
And I was
after
told-
executive
And I was
session.
told to table, so we're going to table.
Yeah, but I want to know, is he in order?
Yes, you can either table it or you can move it on the agenda. Those are the two.
So he's tabling. Okay. Please vote. Who was the second? Marty Gould seconded it. Yeah. Yeah, you went against me.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 10, Resolution CS number C-3778, resolution to approve recommendations and authorize executive counsel for the parish president to proceed with settlements related to international paper in the August 2011 Parish Pearl River fish kill. Mr. Belisario, I have a note that you want to defer until
Yes, I'll make
after
a motion
executive session.
to table resolution C-3778 until after executive session.
Okay, motion to table by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, appeals. Item 1 is Andreas Antzulis, appealing the zoning commission denial of a plan review for a 2,041 square foot retail building located west of Highway 21, south of Arbor Walk Drive, north of Dummy Line Road, being 339 Highway 21, Covington, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean.
Mr. Bender, it's been so long since I've had an appeal. I think I've forgotten how to, no, I'd never forget. It's burned in my memory or in other places. Anyway, this is a piece of property that's real kind of, it's a 0.3 acres, I think. It's just kind of an oddly shaped piece of property that is on Highway 21 that's covered also by the overlay, card overlay. So I still want to help the guy work on it. Having said that, I'd like to make a motion to table.
Excuse me, motion to table by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Please vote. Mr. Dean, that was a motion to table, right? Okay, thank you.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinances for adoption. Item 1 is ordinance calendar number 5004, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 0.889 from A4 to A4 and RO, Ward 8, District 9. Mr. Pellisario.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Ortiz. Please vote.
With a verbal from Mr. Smith, motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 2 is ordinance calendar number 5005, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 28,800 square feet from A5 to NC1, Ward 4, District 4. Mr. Falconer? Motion by Mr. Falconer, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 3, ordinance calendar number 5006, ordinance amending official parish zoning map to reclassify 18,000 square feet from A5 to HC1, Ward 4, District 4. Mr. Falconer?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Falconer, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Number 4 is ordinance calendar number 5007, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify .826 acres from A5 and HC2 to HC1 and HC2, Ward 4, District 4. Mr. Falconer?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Falconer, second by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 5 is ordinance calendar number 5008, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 5.0192 acres from HC3 to I1, Ward 8, District 14. Mr. Smith?
Yes, before we move on this, we'd like to ask Sydney, if you will, or either Teresa, have we received all of the commitments that were offered by the petitioner on this particular request? I think that was a deed restriction that they had offered to give.
Mr. Smith, actually, the one that we needed the deed restrictions on was, the last one,
No, this was one.
5032.
This was one also.
I don't have anything on that.
Okay. Well, due to the sensitive nature of this ordinance and request, we're gonna move to table this.
Okay, motion by Mr. Smith to table, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 6 is ordinance calendar number 5009, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.65 acres from A3 and NC4 to NC4, Ward 8, District 13. Mr. Ortiz?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Ortiz, seconded by Mr. Smith. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 7 is ordinance calendar number 5010, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.254 acres from A1 to A3 and MHO, Ward 1, District 3. Mr. Thompson? Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Sharp. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 8 is ordinance calendar number 5011, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1 acre from A1 to A1 and MHO, Ward 1, District 3. Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5012, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 2.392 acres from NC1 to NC4, Ward 8, District 12. I need a motion, please. Motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 10 is ordinance calendar number 5013, ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 3, alcoholic beverages regarding special events, permits. Mr. Savant.
Yes, Mr. Bender, as you are aware, some technical corrections are necessary to this ordinance prior to adoption. Mr. Hernandez, via email, had pointed out some questions earlier today. And I have reviewed those and made amendments to recommend to the council when you are ready to receive them.
Okay, do we have those amendments up here, Mike?
No, sir, but
No.
you do?
We do.
Okay. But I can go through them very quickly if you
Please.
wish. One is to confirm under restaurant establishments that part of the definition includes that a requirement that 50% of the business done by a claimed restaurant establishment be of non-alcohol food and beverages. That is consistent with state law. Prior parish regulation called for 60%, but one of the purposes of this ordinance is a comprehensive review of our alcohol beverage laws and to make them consistent with state law. And that's one of the instances where a change was made to track state law. Another change that is necessary is, of course, to make the age of a patron of an establishment selling alcohol to be a minimum of 21 instead of 18. As you know, that was changed by the state several years ago, and we're making that correction in our regulations through these amendments. And then in another lesser matter is a change to the allowance of 18-year-olds in a alcohol establishment. Previously, when the law for consuming alcohol was 18, 17-year-olds were permitted into alcohol establishments. They just couldn't drink. Well, when the 21 law went into effect, this provision in state law was changed to 18. In order to enter the establishment, you just can't purchase or receive alcoholic beverages. And that is all that I have.
Mr. Hernandez, first, thank you for emailing me and others on our staff. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Carlo Hernandez, 2818 Mesa Court, Mandeville. You know, one of the things that I want to make clear, and, you know, it's interesting, and of course, legal counsel can comment on this, that they keep referring to the fact that they want to make it consistent with state regulations. Now, the parish has every right to make the regulations more restrictive than the state government. So I want to make that clear. So, you know, this gets to the first item, I guess, which I thought was a typo when I first saw it, because it talked about what a restaurant should be, and it says grosses of at least 50% average monthly revenue for the sale of food items and non-alcoholic beverages. Now, right now, it's 60%. Now, the parish has every right to make it 60% right now. Why does it want to make it 50%? Well, I think because in the zoning ordinance, it is much easier to get a restaurant with lounge than, there are more zoning designations where you can get a restaurant with a lounge than you can with a bar or a lounge. So I think that's really the reason why we're making it easier, apparently, for restaurants with lounges to now reduce the level from 60% now to 50%. I think that's the reason why this is being done. And of course, I thought it was a typo, because normally you know, you see the strikeout and whatnot in the underline, but it wasn't like that on the thing. But I noticed it because any time I review an ordinance, I look for everything in the thing. So, but one thing I do want to point out, and hopefully you'll catch that, is in that same part, you see the word if. The word if should be of, not IF, but OF. It makes much more sense with the word of. okay, and hopefully you'll consider keeping it at 60%. Again, you can make it more restrictive than state government. The next one deals with what qualifications for applicants for permits. These are alcoholic beverage permits. Now, this is back in the day when, the minimum age was 18 years old. And I think most of the regulations then all referred to 18 years. Except for this regulation, interestingly enough. Back in the day, they said you have to be over 18 years. So they wanted someone who to qualify for an alcoholic beverage permit to be over 18 years. So what I'm suggesting and recommending to the council is, wait a minute, if you have to be 21 years of age to consume alcohol, why not be 21 years of age to get a permit for, for alcohol, an establishment? So it makes sense to me, and hopefully it'll make sense to you. And again, yes, it would be a greater restriction than presently in state government, in the state regulations. But again, you can do that. You can make it 21 years. Why not make it 21 years for this? The next ones, I guess, all deal with the fact of this 21 years of age. Now, one of the things that was changed. Now, the other one deals with minors on premises. It says, no person holding a retail dealer's permit and no servant, agent, or employee of the permittee shall intentionally entice, aid, or permit any person under the age of 7, now changed to 18, to visit any place where alcoholic beverages are the principal commodity sold or given away. Again, why not have a requirement? I bet you, well, I suspect that if the sheriff were here, he might recommend that you consider doing this. Why not have the regulation that you need to be 21 years of age in order to go into a bar or lounge? I would think that that's the proper thing to do. What can you do? Oh, you go in, but you can't consume? I mean, I think it's far easier to regulate this if you have the 21-year-old restriction in place. Then the last one is employment of minors. Again, it says no person holding a retail dealer's permit and no servant, agent, or employee of the premises shall, upon the licensed premises, employ anyone under 18 years of age when the sale of alcoholic beverages constitutes the main business. If alcoholic beverages do not constitute the main business, an employee under 18 years of age shall not handle or work with alcoholic beverages. Again, I'm suggesting that why doesn't St. Tammany lead by example and say that, no, in order for you to handle alcoholic beverages, you must be 21 years of age. So why permit someone to work in a lounge or a bar that you're not going to be able to handle alcoholic beverages? I think it's far easier from a regulatory standpoint just to simply make it a regulation that says you have to be 21 years of age or older in order to work in these establishments or to be on the premises. Those were my recommendations that were not I think, in the amendments that you all are about to consider. And yes, I would agree that the other amendments need to take place, with the exception of the word of instead of if. So in that first one, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We got a little bit of a feedback there. I'd like a little bit more time to absorb this, but I'm going to counter what Mr. Carlo has to say about 18-year-olds working in restaurants and having to serve alcohol. Okay? You knock them out, okay? Every kid that's got jobs working in a restaurant, serving food and alcohol, and it's all over St. Tammany Parish, working his way through college, you just put him out of a job. That's why it's 18. Okay? I don't condone that anyone under the age of 21 having alcohol to drink anything, but in this instance, you're talking about putting a bunch of kids out of work who may be working their way through college. And I believe that's why the legislature kept it at 18 and allowed them. They have to go get that permit in order to be a waiter. Every restaurant around here that serves alcohol and food, they have to have that permit. Now, if we require them to be 21, we have just knocked out a job that would take it service every one of these kids that are trying to work their way through college. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, we have Mr. Dean, then Mr. Groby, then Mr. Tanner, and then Mr. Bellisario. Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is the reason why we want to go to 60%, I mean to 50% rather than 60? Can someone tell me?
What was the basis for that?
These are comprehensive amendments to the parish alcohol beverage control regulations. And one of the main reasons for these amendments is to primarily be consistent with state law because, quite frankly, the state has much more ability to enforce alcohol beverage control laws than the parish does. And while Mr. Hernandez may be correct that the parish has some authority to make the laws more strict than what the state does, well, by making the laws more strict, you then have to provide, arguably, the enforcement that goes along with it. Parish government is not really staffed at the present time to be able to provide that additional enforcement. Plus, it arguably would make or possibly create some confusion with law enforcement on which laws it is that they are supposed to enforce.
But
parish laws or state laws.
But
So the
right
attempt
now, I mean, I understand about the 21 and the 18, well, right now I'm talking about a zoning, kind of a zoning issue as to whether you're going to allow 50% or 60% of the food.
And
You see what I mean?
that is at you, the council's discretion.
Thank you.
State statute includes in its definition of a restaurant establishment as an establishment that generates at least 50% of its revenue from non-alcoholic food and beverage products. We, as Mr. Hernandez said, had previously defined it as 60%.
All right, well, let me ask you this. If it's our intent then to just go all the way across the board and be just like the state, I don't think that we ought to do that. I mean, that's my opinion, is that I think we need to stick to what got us here, and what got us here, you know, as one of the top parishes around is what we asked. So I don't know about the 18 or the 21, but I certainly would like to stick with the 60%.
And Mr. Dean, I would just add that, you know, in your decision-making process, just keep in mind that this is a permitting process. In other words, it is a definition that applies to whether or not an establishment is able to get a restaurant alcohol permit, as opposed to a permit that a bar
I hear you.
would be able to acquire.
But in allowing or in supporting or not supporting a restaurant in, let's say, Highway 21, I'm thinking about, where there are a lot of residents and a lot of subdivisions up, I would certainly have that 50% or that 60% in the back of my mind before I would support or not support. And I understand it's a permit
Right.
thing, but.
And also keep in mind, too, that the restaurant establishment permit entitles the selling of beer and wine. If they are going to sell strong alcohol or high alcoholic content alcohol, they would need another permit on top of that, the Class A, in order to be able to serve alcohol, high content alcohol. But a restaurant permit would only allow for the sale of beer and wine.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Groby.
I want to also mirror Mr. Gould's comments, because the first thing that popped in my mind when you asked for that restriction was that the young ladies and men who are serving simply taking your order and carrying the wine from where the bartender who's properly licensed into the glass, that's going to kill them right off the bat. Carla, I couldn't agree with that comment you made.
Can I?
Okay, Mr. Hernandez.
Well, on Mr. Bellisario?
Yeah, I mean, do you briefly want to, I'll
Well,
let you.
I'd like to comment.
Wait. Let's hold you to the end then, okay? Mr. Bellisario.
My sentiments dovetail with Marty Dean's. I had a restaurant in my district adjacent to subdivision, homes within 0 feet. The fence line of the restaurant matched up with the backyards of homes. with the 60%, they were able to make some modifications to the internals of the restaurant and convert it into an entertainment center. So now what happens is, I normally get 6 to 8 phone calls every weekend over the level of noise. There's a sheriff's deputy there. I'm telling y'all, the 60% to me is too low. If you go to 50, you're going to invite more problems in different areas in the parish. As a minimum, we stay at the 60. I would love us to revisit this, because the owners of this business are doing their job, but they can't curb the level of noise, especially when you get past 11:30 or midnight, because the noise happens and the stuff happens in the parking lot, and then you, as the local elected official, you get the phone calls. I've gotten phone calls at 2 in the morning and 3 in the morning, and we don't want, telling you. Oh, they don't leave the parking lot, they stay. That's what happens in some of the places. They all just don't go home at 1 o'clock and go to bed. They're there.
Okay, Mr. Tanner. Okay, Mr. Canulette.
Yeah, Carlos, I appreciate your comments, and I'm thinking about them, but one thing comes to mind, and I definitely agree with Mr. Gould. I know quite a few young men and women working their way through school, through a restaurant, but, you know, they can pick up a rifle at 18, and they can go to jail for life at 18. They can get married. You know, it's you know, at some point it comes to the upbringing of the children. We just can't shove them in a corner and use 21 as the excuse. Wait till you're 21. If we're going to use 21 as the excuse, we should go all the way across the board, not half and half. I mean, I'm listening to Jake and Gene, Marty. Maybe we can revisit a little bit, but you know, they're young adults. They need to be treated like young adults. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. Thank you.
Okay, I have a comment. First of all, I agree with the comments of Mr. Gould on college students working. You know, just about everyone in some shape or form has to work their way through college or have a part-time job or whatever. The 60%, I tend to agree with Mr. Dean and Mr. Belisario to leave it at 60%. The issue of changing 18 to 21, for me, Mr. Hernandez, I think the only way that works is if that would have been a statewide policy, okay? When the legislature first passed, you can get into a ballroom or a lounge at 18, but you can't drink. I just remember reading that in the newspaper and going, only in Louisiana, okay? You know, and that's a problem. But if we change to 21 and 21, we haven't solved anything, okay? The only thing that's going to happen is people are going to go into the cities that allow 18 and 21, whether it be cities north of the lake, whether it be cities south of the lake, okay? It's got to be a statewide issue, I think. Otherwise, it isn't even a Band-Aid, it's a speck. So, you know, that's my thoughts. But the 60%, who agreed with the 60%? Gene, with Marty?
I would too.
And Mr. Gould, and then I agree with the restaurant, the kids working in restaurants and so forth. We have to give them a way to have some work. Mr. Stefancic, did you want to add?
Yeah, I want to move the table this to next month.
I'll second. That's what I wanted to do in the
Okay.
first place. I really wanted to
We have a
absorb
motion by
this.
Mr. Stefanczyk to table till next month, seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, number 11 is ordinance calendar number 5014, ordinance establishing a speed limit of 25 miles per hour on the roads within Oak Manor Estate subdivision, Ward 9, District 11. Mr. Stefanczyk. Motion by Mr. Stefanczyk, seconded by Mr. Smith. Please vote. Got it clear.
Yep, sorry. Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Item 12 is ordinance calendar number 5015, ordinance establishing the placement of stop signs on Cross Gates Boulevard at the intersection of Windsor Drive, Ward 8, District 9.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Smith. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 13, ordinance calendar number 5017, ordinance to provide for the reestablishment of a regional planning commission, include the parish of Tangipahoa, jointly with the parishes of Jefferson, Orleans, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, and St. Tammany. Motion by Mr. Falconer, seconded by Mr. Grovey. Please vote.
We'll have a comment.
Excuse me, Mr. Stefanczyk.
It's a minor change, and I think we can do it without holding this up. But page 4 of 8, item 2, under the parish, the 5 members of the parish of St. Tammany shall include the following. Line item number 2 down there, the very last word should be council rather than jury. It's not parish jury, and it's not police jury. I could understand either one of those, but it says parish jury, and that should be parish council. I'd like to move to amend and then.
Okay, motion to amend by Mr. Stefanczyk, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Please vote on the amendment.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
And since that's a minor change, Jerry, you can go ahead and vote on the other things.
Okay, who made the motion? Falconer and Mr. Groby. On the motion and the second, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 14 is ordinance calendar number 5018, ordinance to amend the growth management agreement between Sales Tax District Number 3 and Abita Springs. Motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 15 is ordinance calendar number 5019, ordinance to amend the growth management agreement between Sales Tax District Number 3 in Covington. Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
Mr. Artigue? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Ordinance calendar number 5020, ordinance to amend the growth management agreement between Sales Tax District Number 3 and Slidell. Let me ask Sydney a question. Sydney, what's the change here? Trilby?
It's to amend the agreement to include the reporting provision as well as a mediation.
That's correct. Okay. Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Canulette. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 17, ordinance calendar number 5021, ordinance to amend the growth management agreement between Sales Tax District Number 3 and Mandeville.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Falconer, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 18 is ordinance calendar number 5022, ordinance to amend the 2013 operating budget, amendment number 4. Need a motion? Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Groby. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 19, ordinance calendar number 5023, ordinance to revoke a portion of Bryan Drive right-of-way located in Slidell Zone Heights subdivision, Ward 9, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Move the table.
Motion to table by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Ortiz. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 20 is ordinance calendar number 5024, ordinance to rename Cary Court as Chelsea Court. Don or Terry?
Don, you want to explain your research?
Yes, back in, excuse me, 2000, the original map of Belia subdivision was filed with the clerk of court and had the names of Cary Court, Jonathan Court, and Wellesley Court. Then, in May of '02, they filed in another map adjusting the names. However, excuse me, that second plat was never signed, if that has any impact.
So at this time, from legal, we would recommend that this matter be tabled and that it be referred in order to go through the correct legal process to have the name of a street changed.
Motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Please vote.
Wait a minute.
Excuse me?
What is the legal process?
They'll have to go to planning, they'll have to go to 911, and planning will have to approve the amendment of the plat. What Don has said was that when we pulled the plat at the courthouse, the provision, the line where it was supposed to be signed by the chairman of the planning commission approving the plat, there was no signature. Also, the parish has never approved it. Therefore, it's got to go back through the process in order to be properly approved before it can be reviewed. Don?
Yes, to further complicate the matter, however, 911 does have the change.
And that's what we were, that's my understanding, we were making this change for 911.
It still needs to be amended. The plat has to be officially amended and approved by the planning commission.
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't even know where it was. No, don't get me wrong. But we kept looking for it. Well, I had the Public Works, I've never heard of that road before, and Public Works Director had never heard of that road before either, so, and that's why it obviously wasn't never on there. So, let's go ahead and vote.
Okay, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 21 is ordinance calendar number 5025, ordinance to correct the road and drainage inventory wards 1, 2, 4, 8, 9, districts 3, 5, 6, 11, 12, and 13. Need a motion? Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Stefancic. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Number 22 is ordinance calendar number 5026, ordinance to extend for an additional 6 months the moratorium on the Highway 21 Plan Corridor, Ward 1, District 1. Mr. Dean.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dean, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Mr. Gould? Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 23, ordinance count number 5027AA, ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances regarding Communications, District Number 1, Board of Commissioners. I have Mr. Belisario is wishing to amend.
Yeah, we need an amendment. When last month, we made a change in the ordinance to include some more clear wording for the sheriff, and it was to be put into our packet today. Okay? And the wording change and clarification deals with, here's it.
It basically standardized the nomination process.
Yeah, for the sheriff's. for
Right.
the sheriff's office, because the wording he wanted, so that wording is now in, under the Board of Commissioners, item number 3.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Belisario to amend, seconded by, excuse me?
There are two others?
There's a couple other changes. Richard Tanner had put forth, then when you look at the ordinance to remove section 4 for compensation, that has been deleted. And then there was discussion on looking, under 5, we struck out and just had the revised statute that was previously done. An additional item that was looked at is the term of office. And when we discussed this during the agenda review, all of the positions on the various boards and commissions run with our terms of office. And also, if you go back in time to early 2000, when we changed the form of government from police jury to parish council, there was one massive ordinance put forth that codified that. And I think for clarity purposes, our legal counsel, I had them pursue that and look at this and to confirm, and I'll let Terry take forward on here on some wording that we can put into this document so this particular board will have wording in its ordinance separate from everybody else's.
The suggestion would be to add the words, "The members shall serve terms concurrent with that of the parish president and parish council," and that would be added at the end of section 3 at the very end.
Gene, are you going to accept that amendment?
As long as the wording is shown in there, going back to that ordinance, that we're doing it for that reason, because the state constitution requires that the term be the 4 years with coinciding with ours. So there's two things already. So if we want clarity, and as I said earlier, if we put in that ordinance from 2000, we'll put into the terms of office for this district will be different in that it's contained within the ordinance rather than the massive ordinance. And I don't have a problem with that. That way, if anybody has any concerns, it's right there.
Mr. Hand, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask, when you stated that, do we need to put a 4-year term? Because oftentimes you serve more than one term, so an individual term is 4 years, which is the way it is in the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, normally, what happened in the very beginning when the parish government changed over from police jury to council, there were master reorganization ordinances that were adopted, and the language was that with regard to these boards mentioned, and this was one of the boards, that the terms of office of the particular members serving would be concurrent with that of the parish president and the council members. And that's the way that it was consistently handled. And the two members who have been appointed since this council took over was Mr. Belisario, and I believe it was Chief Smith from Slidell. The way their terms were handled is that they were both nominated and elected in 2012, but their terms ended with the terms of this council and your presidency. So on December 31st, 2015, they end.
Okay, and that would be a 4-year
That's
term.
correct.
And
It
that's
would
what
be
I just
4
want to make
years.
sure we had the one term for you. Yeah.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're
Mr.
quite
Hand.
welcome.
Okay, does everybody understand? Let's,
I do.
let's get through the amendments in that first,
Okay.
and then I'll hear from Chief Tassin. Okay, so does everybody understand the amendments that we just talked about? Okay, so Gene, you made the motion.
Yes.
Mr. Gould seconded it. Let's vote on the amendments.
We're going to listen to
Excuse
Merle
me?
Tassin, Chief Tassin.
Uh,
Vote on the amendments first.
Not until we vote on the amendments. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, I need a motion and a second to approve as amended.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Groby. Okay, Chief Tassin, welcome.
Thank you very much. Chief Tassan, I'm Fire Chief, Fire District 4. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council. I was elected by the fire chief to represent them on the committee that discussed the changes regarding the appointments to the 911 Communications Board. The sole purpose of the Communications District is to establish the number 911 as a primary emergency telephone number and shorten the time required for a citizen to request and receive emergency aid. Originally, there was a clear consensus among the fire chiefs that there should be no major changes to the representation of the board and that all appointments should be made up of representatives that actually respond to 911 emergencies who strive daily to shorten the time required for a citizen to request and receive that emergency aid. There was also a consensus originally from the fire chiefs that the parish council administration was unhappy with the direction of the 911 board. They could replace their fire, municipal law enforcement, sheriff, or hospital representatives at any time. That was the understanding that we had. There is a consensus now among the fire chiefs that the ordering being considered tonight is the best alternative discussed. At the April 17th Communications District meeting, Michelle Cunningham presented the Communications Board the 2012 year-end financial audit, and according to the minutes from the meeting, she stated this audit was given the highest rating it could possibly achieve. While all the recent financial audits show the Communication District has properly managed the funds, the Parish Council and the Parish Administrative representatives on the committee made it clear they felt they should have more oversight in the operations of the 911 Board, especially in the light of some recent revelations of possible management of funds of another agency as reported in the news. The committee members represented the Parish Council, Parish Administration, Sheriff, Municipal Law Enforcement, and fire agencies. We examined, discussed, and debated different alternatives to the appointments of the 911 Board that would give the Parish Council, the Parish Administration direct input on the 911 Board, and at the same time allow the agencies that actually respond to 911 calls input in the process. The fire chiefs did want me to voice their concerns on the following matters concerning the Communications District operations. The fire chiefs are overwhelmingly opposed to any consideration for our parish to adopt a similar cooperative endeavor agreement like Jefferson Parish has, that is adopted, that places all the 911 employees under the control and employment of one emergency response agency. The employees should continue to work under the new 911 board that's being proposed that represents all the first responders, the parish, and the administration. The Communication District has also begun installing a 911 equipment capable of utilizing technology and GIS-based maps we're using to perform call routing functions for the future, text to 911. That technology should be here pretty soon. It will allow the public to either text, take videos or pictures at a scene, send it through 911, then can be routed to the first responders. That would be fantastic. If we get a picture of what's actually taking place on the scene and where it is, that would help us tremendously. As chairman of the Interoperability Committee, I fully support the parish-wide 700 megahertz system that will also improve the interoperability, and it is desperately needed. I have sat on many meetings where we definitely need this 700 megahertz system. It's desperately needed, and we need to fund it. However, I have stated at several meetings, it should not drain the funds that the communication district is saving to enhance the next generation 911 system, replace their equipment, or communication center backup. The current charge for residential landline is $1. Commercial landline is $2.85 for cell phones. Due to consumers now moving away from residential landlines to cell phones and other factors, the forecast for long-term funding for the communication district under the current revenue stream will be flat or even possibly decrease. The communication district needs to maintain a fund reserve for the communication center, equipment maintenance, and a replacement fund. While it is unpopular, the citizens of our parish may need to consider a change in the current rates in order to adequately fund 911 system in the future. It is our hope that the council and the legislature would allow these citizens to decide if these rates do need to increase in the future. It is also a concern of the fire chiefs that the 911 GIS department could be eliminated or merged into another agency in order to pay for this 700 system. The communications district GIS department works extremely well with the fire departments. They provide reliable data such as locations of high-risk facilities, hydrant locations, and printed maps for data. I will give you a good example. During our PIL rating, we needed a map for our hydrants. We went on GIS to hydrants, sent it to the parish. Within 3 hours of me requesting that map, I got it. That's the mission of them. No offense to another agency, but if I had to go to the GIS department for the assessor's office or maybe the parish, their mission is different than emergency. We would not get that same service. The GIS department maintains this system for the agencies to download, print, and utilize these maps. Currently, Unifier is implementing a program through which maps from the GIS department where data can be uploaded to a file system that makes the maps instantly available on mobile computers. Right now, the Unifier using 911 maps, we can pull up our cell phones and pull up grids with the current up-to-date maps of all the streets and locations. This is outstanding. This is fantastic. This is actually helping the first responders get quickly to the location, and even the volunteers gives them the ability to use that data and have that access to quickly respond and efficiently to that. This type of information is also available to other law enforcement agencies if they choose to use it. The Communication District GIS Department also coordinates with the parish tax assessor, the school district, and some city GIS offices and other to make this data available to all public agencies and improve data sharing to avoid agencies duplicating work, and this has an overall cost savings. In closing, all the committee members had an opportunity to make their own recommendations, and they did so. I would like to thank the committee chairman, Marty Gould, for allowing me and other representatives to speak very openly and honestly, sometimes heatedly, to speak and address our concerns of the fire and law enforcement agencies. I believe because this was allowed, it also allowed a collaborative effort to occur between the parish, the city, the sheriff, municipal law enforcement, in a collaborative effort to provide a 911 system that will continue striving to shorten the time required for a citizen to request and receive emergency aid. I also want to thank the council for allowing me the opportunity to inform them of the chief's concerns. On Tuesday morning, the chiefs or their representatives, and it was unusual to have a representative from every fire department at that meeting, they all voted to support this ordinance that retains one sheriff, one municipal law enforcement, one fire representative on the Communications District Board, and we asked the council to consider it because it was the best alternative presented to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Gould.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Chief Tassan and Chief Randy Smith, George Bonet from the Sheriff's Department, and Trilby Lemfant from the administration. You know, you could tell people cared because it did get heated, it got passionate, but you could tell how much people cared. about what we're doing and to make sure we want to do what's right and make this thing the best possible system for the people. And I think with that type of cooperation on the commission, once it's in place, we will accomplish that. And I do agree with Chief Kazan about we are in a situation where we probably going to have shrinking revenues. But before we go down that road, I believe the council feels as though we just want to make sure we got everything right and that we've done everything we possibly can. And I really appreciate your time. I respect you.
Well, I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity to address those concerns and let the council know. You know, believe me, we as fire chiefs, it's hard sometimes for all of us to agree. I think you don't know that, but looking at this alternative, it was the best one out there for us. But they were very adamant, and they want to keep the GIS department. They do not want agreement like what Jefferson Parish has. They're worried about the finances. And we want to be able to have a good working relationship with the people that's on the council and do what's best for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Belisario.
Merle brings up a point that I had addressed with other committee members. When you look at the funding, we have 10-year projections, and what we are seeing is that the home landlines, it's gradually going down. The cell phones are almost stagnant now. After the storm, the revenue just took off. It has settled down, and sometime in the future, when we talked about looking at coming forth with a tax election to raise the fees, no one on our board felt that that was the thing to do at this point in time. One of the big things that's going to happen, and nobody knows it, is the improvements and changes in technology. What devices are we going to be using 10 years from now versus what we have now to be able to communicate with each other? And we're going to have to be looking at that as a parish and how we then fund the 911 communications district. And some of his other concerns, I don't see us going along the lines with Jefferson Parish, not from any discussions I've had with anybody. And I'm sure we're going to take input from the municipalities and from the fire district. I have a tremendous respect for them.
Okay, we have a motion, and that was by Gould and Groby, as amended. So now we need to vote. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Thank you. Okay, number 24 is ordinance calendar number 5028, ordinance authorizing the parish to accept the dedication and donation of the streets, shoulders, signage, and rights-of-way in Audubon Lake subdivision, District 5. Mr. Gould, excuse me, I'm sorry. Motion by Mr. Falconer, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent. Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 25 is ordinance calendar number 5029, ordinance amending official parish zoning map to reclassify 25,000 square feet from A4 to I1, Ward 8, District 14. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Teresa. This is the one that you have received, all of the submissions that were offered.
Yes, we do
And
have those for them.
Okay, and Terry, it's all in order?
I have not, honestly, I have not reviewed it, TJ.
Okay. We'll move on it to adopt.
Motion to adopt, Mr.
Yes.
Smith? Motion by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Canulet. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Item 26 is ordinance calendar number 5030, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 4.149 acres from HC1 to HC2, Ward 2, District 2. Mr. Sharp.
Yes, Mr. Shane and Mr. Charles Floka are here this evening, and I'd like for Mr. Shane to tell us what he has for us. We have some deed restrictions that we're going to be adding to this property, and I'd like for Mr. Shane to kind of briefly go over those and let's show that they're entering into the record.
Okay. Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Bender and Mr. Sharp. Honorable Counsel Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell firm. I represent Dorsey Development, which hopes to develop a Dollar General market store in the Lee Road community at the intersection of Lee Road and Bruning Road. After lengthy discussions, both in public meetings as well as private meetings with residents in the area and also with guidance from Councilman Sharp, I'm happy to say that the residents and the developer have come to terms as it relates to certain deed restrictions. That document was prepared and approved by all concerned a few weeks ago. We have executed the document and would ask that it be placed into your record this evening as part of your minutes, assuming that you adopt the ordinance. I'm also committed to recording the deed restriction in the public records of St. Tammany Parish tomorrow so that they will bear as a restriction running against the land. Again, we appreciate the opportunity Dollar General does to have a larger and hopefully a more productive presence in the Lee Road community. The new market store will be more in the nature of a neighborhood supermarket and traditional Dollar General store, providing a much broader range of goods and particularly grocery items that are absent in that community. So we look forward again to doing some good things in the Lee Road community. I appreciate Mr. Floka's leadership on behalf of the residents, which I'm sure at times was a thankless task, but he has hung with it, and certainly I think at this point I'd like to give him a chance to say a few things. If I could respectfully ask that perhaps the ordinance as stated be amended to reflect the acreage to be 4.408 acres as opposed to 4.149. I would like to add that when the case was initially filed and advertised, it was 4.913. It's probably moved 3 or 4 times since then. It has settled, if you will, at 4.408, which was the acreage that we discussed last month when we were able to dismiss the appeal. The survey that's been submitted to you at the prior meeting and the deed restriction with the legal description and survey is 4.408 acres. This is Mr. Charles Floka.
Mr. Floka?
Hello. Thank you. I'll be very brief. I think that the addition of a Dollar General market to the community will actually be a plus for everybody, including the people that live on Bruning Road. And we're very appreciative of the ability to be able to place the kind of restrictions that go along with the rezoning to allow the Dollar General market on the property, because I think overall it affords us the kind of restrictions that we need to make sure that Bruning Road remains the kind of community that we think it should. I want to thank Councilman Sharp and Paul Dorsey and Jeff Shane for cooperation. Overall it's been a somewhat arduous and tortured process at times, but the end result was worth it.
Thank you, Mr. Floka.
Thank you.
Mr. Sharp.
I'd like to thank Mr. Floka and his group for their cooperation, Dollar General in particular, for a corporation of their magnitude to be as cooperative as they have been in agreeing with all of these deed restrictions that we're placing on the property. They really have shown themselves to want to be a viable member of the community. And I'd like to thank Mr. Shane in particular for his mitigation in this whole process. He has done an excellent job and is largely responsible for us being here tonight with all parties involved being in agreement. So I'd like to thank Mr. Shane for that. And do we need to adopt the amendment? first, or is this simply a correction? We need to adopt the amendment?
Yeah, yes, sir, make a motion to.
I move to amend it to say 4.1408 acres.
I think, excuse me one second, Mr. Sharp, 4.408.
10.4, right.
Okay.
4.408.
I thought that's what you said.
Yeah,
Okay, motion by Mr. Sharp on the amendment.
to amend.
Seconded by Mr. Dean. Please vote on the amendment.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, Mr. Sharp, motion on the ordinance as amended.
Move to adopt the ordinance as amended.
Motion by Mr. Sharp, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Thank you. Okay, item 27 is ordinance calendar number 5031, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 3 acres from A1 to A1A, Ward 4, District 4. Mr. Falconer.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Falconer, seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Item 28 is ordinance calendar number 5032, ordinance amending the official parish zoning map to reclassify 1.64 acres from A2 to A2 and MHO, Ward 2, District 6. Mr. Tanner? Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Gould. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, moving to nominations. This is nominations for one member to be voted on by us as a group, the parish council, on this task force that Senator A.G. Crow created via a Senate resolution regarding studying of the viability of an inspector general for St. Tammany Parish. So we'll open the floor to nominations.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to put the name up for the representative of the parish council, to be Attorney Neil Hall.
Okay, motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Mr. Ortiz. Any other nominations? Okay. Motion by Mr. Gould to close the floor. Who was the? I'm sorry, Mr. Red, Chris got you there. Is that all right with you, since you have seniority? Got to check with Red, man, I know. Okay, seconded by Chris, and we can vote on this because it's not a legal entity, okay? Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, I might just mention very, very briefly that, and Don, we may want to, even though, I think Senator Crow's resolution calls for me to set the first meeting around August 1st, or I think it says August 1st. That's the date of our next council meeting. Just so that the council will know, I asked Don to put a letter together to send to Senator Crow with some questions regarding expenses and how the state Senate had budgeted to pay for some of these expenses. Don, have we gotten a reply on this? No response at this point, okay? I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm sorry to
Oh,
talk
it's okay.
while you're doing that. A couple things. We don't have all the names from every entity that's supposed to appoint.
That's where I was going to.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay.
And, I know the bill was changed, or the resolution was changed a couple times. The final resolution, Mr. Bender puts that responsibility on me to call it, but you can do it if you'd like.
No.
No?
But,
Ms. Brister,
yeah.
I've seen it change so many times.
it has.
With my title changed multiple times, it doesn't matter to me.
Well,
I just
either one of us
remember
can do it.
August
I mean,
1st.
it's in the resolution that the last change put it as parish president. So
That's fair enough.
happy to do it, and we'll do that, as soon as we can get enough names
Yes.
put together.
And, Madam President, let me just say to you,
Yes.
I didn't pick up that last change, okay?
Yeah.
But what I'll tell you is, what I was working towards was using the the conference room on the first floor in the building that our
Next door.
attorneys are in.
Yes.
Because
yeah.
that's the only
That's
place
big
we
enough.
can see that's big enough, okay?
You're right, that is.
So, at any rate,
There's
so-
24 members of the committee, and
Right.
that suits that size
right.
fine.
And I don't know how many have been named yet, but this was our last council meeting to name
Right.
before August 1st.
And that's why I asked Renee Roberts, our legislative liaison officer, to come up and give me that number, because I hadn't gotten a count as of late.
Yes.
And we still have,
About 20 people left to be nominated.
we still lack 20 people to be nominated. So, and Renee is calling on them and sending out notices to get those nominations. So we just
Okay.
haven't gotten them in yet.
And Renee, I know you know this, but for the public's sake, that resolution says you have to have a quorum.
Yes, sir, by August 1st.
Right, I mean, so it's important that these other agencies get moving.
And we're calling, and you have now, or you will have nominated yours, I have nominated mine, the legislators have nominated theirs, so it's the other entities that we're working on trying to get their names.
Okay. Mr. Grovey?
President Brister, what's the total number that have been selected so far, counting tonight? Do we know? How many we short?
4 out of
Thank you.
24. And it's in just the ones I just named, the legislators, you and I. The legislator, and excuse me, in the coroner, the 4th.
Okay, and I believe, Mr. Franzo, y'all have named your two.
Yeah, we do. I'm going to send her an email tomorrow.
Mr. Ernst and the attorney, Mr. Brazak, am I pronouncing it right?
Legal counsel, Mr. Jim Blazek, and
Blazek.
and General Carl Ernst will be the two
Okay.
people.
If you'll just email those
I'm
two,
going to send it tomorrow morning.
that'd be perfect, and we'll keep working on them and let you know. We'll get the meeting called as soon as we can get a quorum.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave it to you to call the
Yeah,
meeting.
and we'll work with Renee.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Belisario.
I just have one thing to top this entire process. If this all goes through, hopefully it will. I don't have a problem with an inspector general, but it's unfortunate that the resolution the first time around was totally incorrect. At least they got it fixed the second time around.
Yeah, and just very briefly.
Yeah,
and
Jerry,
then
let me
we'll-
say one other thing on
Oh,
this.
sure.
And it just slipped my mind for a second there. The problem with this resolution, to go through that many times, is, to my knowledge, there is no communications from the senator to the parish president or to you or to Dawn as our council administrator. So this thing was done, I don't know who did the input, but at least they should have called and ran it by us, because when we worked with Tim Burns on his bill, he came to us with a draft. A.G. Crow came with a blank sheet of paper when he was coming up with his first ordinance, and of course, we know that went nowhere. So the fact that his resolution was incorrect more than once is not surprising.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Belisario, and I do want to thank Renee Roberts, because she has been working, trying to pull this together, and she is the one that helped rewrite the resolution to get it corrected, so. With the names, however they were wanting to do it, she wanted the correct titles put in there. Either way they went, so that's what she was doing. Thank you.
I'll wait for Mr. Canulet. Mr. Canulet?
Yeah, Mr. Bender, I was going to ask us to get something off to Mr. Crow's office. This is his baby. He needs to drive this train. He's the one who put it up. He should be getting these people to put their nominations up.
Well,
Not just us.
unfortunately, in his resolution, he gives us that responsibility, so, I would agree with you, but that's unfortunately not the way it was written, so.
But Chris and Madam President, I did have Don draft a letter a couple of weeks ago to Senator Crow on some things that were not talked about, saying, okay, who's going to pay for this, who's going to pay for this, what is in the Senate budget to pay for this, et cetera, you know, just to see if we can get some feedback. Now, we'll see if we do. I just want to say, because I know the man had to really look deep, Mr. Hall, okay, to allow himself to be nominated. And I know that everybody on this council and every attorney I've ever spoke to in St. Tammany Parish, when you say the guy's name, he's extremely well thought of, okay? In conversations with Mr. Hall, he's assured me that he will keep an open mind, that he will look at the state constitution, because IG is one thing, but as we all know, or most of us know, there are a lot of legal hurdles, okay? We've got funding. So it's going to take a group effort of this group to bring something of value to fruition, whatever it turns out to be. So I think Mr. Hall will be valuable. Frankly, I think any attorney that's going to be on this group will have value in looking at state law. So with that, I'll be quiet. Discussions and other matters. Motion to refer to Zoning Commission for recommendation of proposed rezoning of 1.41 acres from CD1 to A2, Ward 9, District 11. Mr. Stefanski.
Yes, I think I'm going to move to send this to zoning, and I know we've always said we ought to quit these things, but this is a house that was zoned a golf course, and we need to change it back to the house. And in particular, it was a house that housed mentally retarded people, and it needs to be rezoned to A2 and classified as a house rather than part of Royal Golf Course. And that's why I'm sending it back.
Mentally challenged.
What's the name of the golf course, Mr. Stefanski?
Royal Golf Course.
Royal, okay.
This place is right down the street from me. It's, for those of you who don't know, it was called Peter the Fisherman. Housed,
Yeah.
You know, it housed, mentally challenged people for several years, and they recently found out that they were classified as part of the golf course instead of a residential home. So we're sending it back to planning, and hopefully that'll get or zoning, and that'll get corrected.
All right, the motion was by Mr. Stefanski, seconded by Mr. Belisario. Please vote to refer back to zoning.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Okay, it need a motion to open items off the floor. Motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Falconer. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, no one absent.
Need a motion to go into executive session on items 1 and 2.
So move.
Excuse me. Mr. Tanner.
Go into executive session on something that's not on the agenda?
They're both on the agenda.
They're both off the floor.
agenda.
Then we move to go into executive session. Well, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Mr. Gould, did you want to make the motion? Yeah. Okay, motion by Mr. Gould, seconded by Mr. Tanner, or Mr. Falconer. Did you already make this? You already did, okay. Please vote. Double motion.
The motion by Mr. Faulkner, a second by Mr. Stefanczyk to come out of executive session. Vote is unanimous, no, 2 people absent.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we go back to, on page 5, resolution number 9. And that is CS number C-3777, resolution to authorize the parish president to sign a memorandum of agreement between the Department of Justice and St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office regarding the audit of the mental health program at St. Tammany Parish Jail. I need a motion.
So moved, Chairman.
Wait, jeez.
Chairman,
The one I heard, let me tell you what I heard. I heard Richard first, and I heard Steve by a nose. Richard beat you by a nose, Steve. So he's got the first, you got the second.
I think he has a
No.
question.
I'm going to say the motion needs to be to move off the table.
Yes, because it was tabled.
Richard, does he have me on this one?
I'll second his motion.
All right, motion by Steve, where did he go?
He's right here.
Oh, to move him off the table, seconded by Jean, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Okay, now I have,
Now you can vote.
I have a motion by Mr. Tanner, correct, Mr. Tanner? To adopt that resolution, seconded by Mr. Stefanczyk, please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Resolution number 10 is CS number C-3778, resolution to approve recommendations and authorize executive council for the parish government to proceed with settlements related to international paper and the August 2011 Pearl River fish kill. Need a motion?
Motion to move from the table.
Motion to remove from table, seconded by Mr. Belisario, Ms. O'Brien. Ms. O'Brien, you second? Please to take off the table.
Motion is unanimous, 2 absent.
Motion to adopt. Motion by Mr. Belisario, seconded by Ms. O'Brien. Please vote.
Motion passes, 11 yeas, 1 nay, 2 absent.
Motion to adjourn.